Okay, so very good evening to all of you. Now, see what we have discussed till now. We started with international trade. Why international trade is important and why countries go for trading involved in international trade. And apart from that, we had shared that next we had shared about protectionism. Isn't it? Protectionism means that countries they go for restricting the exports, may restrict imports. So countries can go for putting some barriers, which can be tariff barriers, which can be non-tariff barriers. So हमने अभी तक क्या discuss किया? We have discussed international trade क्यों important है, international trade countries के लिए किस हद तक important है. Number two, we had shared कि countries they go for protecting their domestic players. अपने domestic industries को protect करने के लिए government can go for imposing tariffs. Tariffs can be export tariffs, import tariffs, and they can go for non-tariff barriers also. Non-tariff barriers of fixing that you are exploiting the environment, you are using exploiting human resources, you are not following the standards, quality standards. So any form of restrictions can be imposed through non-tariff barriers. So we have discussed about why trade is important. We had shared why the countries they go for protectionism approach. Now, today we are going to discuss about trade negotiations. Trade negotiations basically means that why two countries or why one country can go for saying that we want to buy goods from, suppose US says that we want to buy goods from India. Now, have you ever thought about why US wants to buy goods from India? Why they want to buy labor resources from India? Why they want to buy? Because that is how, because you see in India, we have best of the IT professionals. We have best of the brains in terms of medical. हमारे पास सबसे अच्छे डॉक्टर्स हैं, ब्रेनी डॉक्टर्स हैं, software designers and software engineers हैं. So why US wants to take, and what US is having? US is having capital, US is having machines, US is having equipments. But उनके पास what they're lacking? They're lacking people. They're lacking people, those who can be deployed on those machines. They can generate high productivity. So that is how negotiation happens. So if US says that we want to buy services from India, US says they want to buy services from India, but they don't expect that India should also buy from them. This is known as unilateral trade negotiation. So unilateral trade negotiation happens normally from one country, which is given benefits to the other country. Now it seems that unilateral, why the unilateral is happening? Why US is going to buy from India? Are they doing any obligation on us? हमारे ऊपर कुछ वो favor कर रहे हैं? No, definitely not. Why? Because उनको best of the labor force मिल रहा है. So they are gaining, no? So they are gaining, that is why they are going for it. But it is unilateral. So unilateral reason being, it is a one way only. Yes? So that is why, so you have unilateral trade negotiations. You can have bilateral trade negotiations. Bilateral trade negotiations can be in terms of, for example, Singapore and India, or you say about BRICS countries, or you say about ASEAN and India. So ASEAN and India, seven countries in one block, and the other is India. So they trade for a specific product or services. Then we say it is bilateral. Bilateral can be with respect to a particular block in one country, or it can be between two countries. Multilateral can be between more than one country or three countries or whatever it is about. So number one, why trade negotiations? Trade negotiations happens because countries mutually want to decide about, maybe on the political front, like the way we have made a deal between, we have made a deal with Russia. Russia for oil, despite Syria, despite Ukraine and Russia having conflict of interest. So we said, हमने कहा हम Russia से oil लेंगे. We will take oil from Russia, not in rubles. We are taking oil from Russia in rupees. Because वो हमारा political trade negotiation है. So trade negotiation can happen at a political level. It can happen at an economical level. Economical level, We'll exchange currencies. We'll go for exchange transactions that we'll buy in rupee terms. That is economic. We'll buy oil from you. You will give us at a lower price than the OPEC countries. That is trade negotiation. So trade negotiation can happen for the benefit of the countries to cost efficiency, to gain cost efficiency के लिए, productive efficiency के लिए, infrastructure के लिए, technology के लिए. So you can go for trade negotiations so that the two countries can gain. So that's the topic for today's. Okay. So what exactly is trade agreement? Trade agreement is something like a kind of a document, isn't it? It's a document between two countries, which is duly acceptable by two countries, or maybe more than two countries, or maybe group of countries. So it can be with any one trade agreement. So trade agreement, what is trade agreement? It is a legal and institutional framework that lays the foundation for integration among the countries. So you're legally bound. You have some institutions which have to follow it. So that is a legal framework which follows a defined system. कि हम ये tariff follow करेंगे. We'll give you subsidies on this. We'll allow your goods to come to India. You will allow our goods to come to your country. So this is kind of a agreement between countries, or it can be one way also. So it is a legal and institutional framework that laid down the foundation between the engagement of two countries. Engagement can be in any form. It can be for product, it can be for process, it can be for technology, it can be for culture, it can be for education, it can be for health. Any form it can be. So this is how the trade agreement happens, okay, between the countries. And why it happens. That's the reason it happens. But trade agreement sometimes can be our biggest drawback also. When can it be the biggest drawback? Suppose a political regime changes in the country. So political regime changes in the country means ideologies will change. You know that political leaders can be like on a different level. So absolutely right, Neeraj. The challenge is about textile, the challenge is about clothes, the challenge is about agriculture products. That's the challenge we have in terms of trade negotiations. हम आगे share करेंगे as we'll proceed. So trade agreements, you think is good, but sometimes it can be a problematic also. Problematic, why problematic? Because if the two countries' leaders are not getting along, then in that case, आपने documents कुछ भी बना लिए, but the two leaders which have to support that policy are not in favor, how the things are going to work. If suppose the circumstances in the country changes, then in that case, you have made a deal prior, but now the circumstances are altogether different. Then in that case, uski sanctity nahi rahegi and you will not gain benefit. So that then in that case, agreement will not be beneficial for the players, isn't it? Then suppose you say that a particular sector is getting adversely impacted and the other party is not realizing that, and it is leading to adverse impact on your country. So you may be hesitant. आप उस case में सोचेंगे कि नहीं, we should not go for the deal in that case. So you may not go for a deal. And this can create a problem, okay? So sometimes it happens that the trade agreement is in place, but its execution cannot happen. So आपने एक agreement कर लिया, but हो सकता है कि कुछ constraints हो, political constraints हो, economic constraints हो, macro fundamentals constraints हो, context-based constraints हो. Constraints means limitations, which makes you that this is not worth going for it. So this is the complexity of trade agreement. Okay, so trade agreements can be the form of free trade area. Free trade area means two countries can have free trade area. So they can say that India and Malaysia will say, okay, fine. आप दो countries में in our two countries will not go for imposing any tariff. So कोई tariffs नहीं हो गए, there will be no tariff barriers. And these two countries will go for trading. So free trade agreement means the member countries in the free trade area will not go for imposing any tariff or non-tariff. I hope आप differentiate करते हैं between tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So there will be no tariff and no non-tariff in that case. And this is how the free trade area is decided or is defined in terms of trade agreements. So trade barriers, if they are removed, then in that case, it will lead to economic integration, obviously. But the two countries, India and Malaysia, may have a free trade agreement. But if any other country, China wants to trade with Malaysia, China wants to trade with India, तब आप different norms set up कर सकते हैं. Okay, so within the free trade, the members will go for no tariff, isn't it? But outside the free trade area, you can have different norms for the different players. So this is how. So India का अगर free trade agreement Malaysia के साथ है, Malaysia और India will have the same norms in terms of no tariff and no trade barriers. But Malaysia is transacting with any other country, then they can decide about कि हमको क्या tariff रखना है, what should be the rate, what should be the import duty, where should we go for subsidize. So that is a different story. Okay, so this is how the free trade agreement happens. Then custom union and economic union. Custom union is about that you say that the members of the custom union, it is group of countries which form custom unions in which there are within that custom union, there will be no trade barriers and any country transacting in that, उनके लिए किसी भी उस country में transact करेंगे, norms will be same. Okay, so in this case, trade barriers between members are totally eliminated. Means there are no barriers. Number two, an identical barriers to trade with non-members. So any one non-member going for transacting with these custom unions, they'll have the same norms. Are you differentiating? आप differentiate कर पा रहे हैं free trade agreements? So how many countries India has free trade agreements? Manoj, I'll share that with you, and you can always refer to Government of India, DPIIT site. You can find out all the free trade agreements India has. अभी recently Australia, UAE के साथ हमने किया है, हमने Canada के साथ किया है. So the number of free trade agreements have increased over the period of time because India expand कर रहा है. So we want to have more and more free trade agreements with the with developing countries and even developed countries, which can help us to gain better product capacity development and to have more sustainable growth in the country, not only for the domestic players, but also to cater to international market. Okay. So anyways, so we are talking about custom unions. So custom unions and free trade agreements से आप differentiate करते हैं. Free trade agreement में those two countries which are part of members of the free trade agreement, they will have uniformity in terms of transacting. But non-members के लिए they can go for differentiating. ठीक है? But customs unions में क्या है? You will not have any kind of, so within the members, the norms are same as free trade area. But for non-members, also you have the same norms. That means what one member is following, the same norms have to be followed by other members for the non-members. Are you getting it? That's about custom unions. Suppose अगर in custom union में अगर हम कहें European Union country, so European Union countries, if within European Union, they will have all kind of trade barriers removed, isn't it? But at the same time, if India goes for transacting with any of the European Union country members, उनके लिए tariff norms same होंगे. Getting it? So the non-member transacting here will have the same external tariff norms. Okay, so that's custom union. What is common market? Common market is a customs union in which the free movement of goods, movement of free goods, movement of free services. That free doesn't mean that free means that people can move from one European country to another European country. The goods can move from one European country to another. You can transact services from one to the other. Capital can be transacted from one to the other. So that is about the member nations. So member nations of the custom union, they can move, people can move, services can move, labor can move, technology can move. That is about common market. So this is the feature of customs union. An economic union means you are going for having the same currency also. So currency, just a euro currency. So euro currency is for the European Union countries, except Brexit. अगर आपको पता हो Brexit concept, isn't it? So economic integration. Economic integration basically means that you trade agreements helps. See, there are different countries. Kuch developed hai, kuch underdeveloped hai. Some are developing countries. Now, these countries all across the world are on different level of growth. If trade agreements happen, then the world across will be more economically integrated. The funds may flow from developed countries to developing countries. Labor can flow from developing countries to developed countries. And this is how the world gets economically integrated. So trade agreements helps economic integration, transfer of goods, transfer of services, transfer of technology, transfer of people. So all fronts you can go for integration. So obviously, this is how you get economically integrated. Okay, so Darshan, I share that country withdraw. They cannot go for withdrawing as per the agreement. आप agreement समझते हैं, agreements की terms and conditions होती है. You cannot go for withdrawing that. If you go for that is breach of agreement, isn't it? You cannot go for that. So these are certain. So then it goes to dispute settlement. वो हम आगे share करेंगे. अभी आप इतना आगे मत बढ़ो बेटा, so that it becomes difficult for you to understand what we are sharing at this point of time. Okay, so customs union, you are clear. Economic union means it's more broader. Customs union is about goods hai, services hai, labor hai, capital hai. They are moving across nations. But in economic, you have currency can move. You can have the same rules and regulation. Taxation norms are same. Everything is same. So that becomes economic union. Okay. So economic सबसे अच्छा example, a customs union and economic union together is European Union. European Union is a perfect example of customs union and economic union because people can move, technology can move, then services can be exchanged. At the same time, currency is also same euro currency, isn't it? So that is about economic union also. So national agriculture, social tax, social transfer, taxation, आपकी fiscal policy, monetary policy are all unified together between the countries, even a common currency. That is known as economic union. Okay, so economic union example. See, custom union, I would say, if I say that custom union, I'm sorry. Okay, so if I say custom union can be a subset of economic union. Yes, because economic union is a broader term. इसमें आप taxation की भी बात कर रहे हैं. You're talking about taxation, fiscal policy, the government, monetary policy. You're talking about unified, harmonized countries and common currency. So it is a complete, it is like a one country. It's like a one country. European Union, it's like a one country which has n number of countries. And European Union, has a common currency that is euro. So this is how customs union, because this is a part of European Union. So that's about customs union and European Union. And I hope you differentiate with respect to free trade agreements. Okay. So what is unilateral trade agreements? No. G20 is not economic union. G20 cannot be economic union because G20, हर country की currency अलग है ना, सही है? So we cannot say that G20 is economic union. You see, we have shared economic union में आपके taxation norms same होंगे, currency same होगी. That is economic union. Okay. So G20 is not economic union. So unilateral trade agreements. What are unilateral trade agreements? जैसा आपको बताया, US and developing countries. So US can go for deciding about that we want to buy IT professionals from India import or get services of IT professionals from India because India mein they are good. We want to buy textiles from China because वहाँ पे yarn सस्ता है, so they want to buy from there. So they can decide about so that their production can increase at a lower cost and they can gain. Yes. So this is about unilateral trade agreement. So unilateral trade agreement, it happens when a country imposes the trade restrictions. Suppose country says, India says that we will not buy Chinese goods. So it is a unilateral trade agreement. We are restricting or we are putting high tariff on Chinese toys. So that means it is unilateral trade agreement. It is from our side, but it's not that China is also doing the same. Maybe it happens that China may go for imposing higher tariff on us later, but that will be at a later date. So unilateral is one way, okay? It can be good also, it can be bad also. Good example is like India is able to explore, uh, outsource its services to US. जैसे आपका TCS है, Infosys है, they outsource their services to US because we have best the people unilateral trade agreements. Okay, it is beneficial for both. Darshan, it depends. It depends. जैसे US developed countries, अगर developing countries से services ले रही हैं, so it is good because developing countries are getting employment and developed countries are reducing their cost. So दोनों के लिए beneficial हो गया. But it is initiated by one player. That's about unilateral. So initiated by one, gain can be to both or can be to one. That is unilateral. Okay. So what are the advantages of unilateral trade policies? Unilateral trade policies are definitely short term. You cannot go for a long term one way deciding about कि हम आप पे taxes impose कर रहे हैं and we will be buying, like your goods will be not accepted in India. So you cannot do this for a longer period of time. So tariff, you can go for raising tariff prices or the import prices for a specific period of time or absolutely. NATO is trade agreement plus आपने देखा NATO is also about taking care of securities and others. So it is not only trade agreement, it is about taking care about custom union. You can say it's a complex form of custom union, which is also taking care about other things. So if Russia is going to attack, NATO, US players are going, all the NATO players are going to support the other player for this. And that is why Russia and Ukraine crisis is happening, you understand? Because it's not only about trade, it is beyond trade. Otherwise, Russia attack ही नहीं करता Ukraine पे कभी, isn't it? So the what are the unilateral trade? Unilateral trade plus and minus. It can help as a result the price of locally made produce because if you go for imposing tariffs on imports, so that is a one way. So अगर India impose करता है Chinese goods पे imports पे tariff, then what is going to happen in India? Those products which are imported from China will become expensive. They become expensive means either the consumers will pay high price or domestic players will be encouraged. Let us produce it because prices up जा रही हैं, so that motivates them to produce. But they should have a capacity also to produce. So if they can produce well and good. अगर suppose सोलर सेल्स के लिए अगर गवर्नमेंट कहता है कि और लिथियम बैटरी के लिए अगर गवर्नमेंट कहती है कि वी गो फॉर इम्पोजिंग हाई टैरिफ फॉर इफ यू बाय lithium cells from China and because of that what's happening अब इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स का प्रोडक्शन बढ़ता जा रहा है इंडिया में बट गवर्नमेंट हैज सेड दैट यू कैन नॉट इंपोर्ट और इफ यू इंपोर्ट इट फ्रॉम चाइना विल इंपोज हायर टैरिफ्स ऑन यू नाउ व्हाट टू डू दोस electric vehicles manufacturing companies, what they'll do, उनकी cost तो बढ़ती जाएगी ना, so their cost goes up. So if their cost goes up, that means, so I've given you two examples. एक example आपको दिया US का, US is buying goods from India, services from India at a lower rate, and they say that we want to buy from you at a lower rate, unilateral for the services. दूसरा एग्जाम्पल आपको दिया इंडिया हैज imposed higher tariffs on buying Chinese toys. That is unilateral trade. So any one-way transaction which happens, that is a unilateral trade. So it has to be short term. Long term में आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते. If your country is able to produce that good, if you put import tariff high and your country is able to produce that, then it is good for the country. But अगर आप नहीं produce कर सकते, then your country will suffer. Because solar cells के लिए अगर आप कहते हैं कि India can produce and India can go for producing it and we will not buy or we'll buy at a, if you buy, we will be imposing higher import duty on you. अगर आप China से ले रहे हैं, तो what is going to happen? आपकी production capacity है नहीं, you are not that competent, और आपने imports पे tariff लगा दिए. What will happen? The cost will go up. Cost goes up means consumers will be getting at a high price. Even companies' margin will decrease. So overall, it will be lost to the country. So depends. Exports may drop. It may lead to a layoff in the country, and it will have a global trade negative impact. So unilateral trade agreements, if it is about helping one country at the cost of other, then definitely it is not acceptable. What is bilateral trade? So bilateral trade, we have shared bilateral traders between two countries. It can be multilateral trade between many countries. So it is not about only the number of countries have changed. It is also about kind of relationship they have, the kind of products they may go for. So in unilateral, it may be for one specific product. But multilateral trade agreements may, it can be for many products. It can be services also. It can be one product and one service also, isn't it? So थोड़ा सा complex हो जाएगा. Plus it will be more beneficial for both the players in the case of bilateral trade agreements and even multilateral trade agreements. So unilateral trade agreements, like US has gone for this duty-free status to 43 least developed countries. So these 43 least developed countries in the world can go for giving their products, or the US will buy from them at a they'll buy from them at a very low price, almost. So low cost of imports will help them, these underdeveloped countries, to sell their goods to US, and US will gain benefit to that. Okay, so bilateral trade agreements, I believe one of you were asking about. So we have bilateral trade agreements with जैसे Singapore है, Malaysia है, Thailand के साथ में हमने free trade agreements किए हैं. So we have done free trade agreements. Even we have done it with ASEAN. So we have done the free trade agreement with ASEAN also. So these are bilateral trade agreements. So it can be with one country, it can be with group of countries. You can go for bilateral trade agreements. And why India has gone for it? So India has gone for bilateral trade agreement with ASEAN countries because for the services we want. So what we want, that they should open their country. We have requested them to open their countries for making us enter in the country for what kind of services? So for teaching, for nursing services, for architecture. So Indian architecture, Indian teachers, Indian chartered accountants, and medicinal professionals can go to their country and serve them. And so because we Indians are good in terms of language. So from India, if they'll go over there, they can serve over there. So हमने Singapore के साथ, Malaysia के साथ, Thailand के साथ free trade agreement we have signed at the same time with Asian countries. So we are saying Asian countries. So we say that we want to expand. We want to expand telecom services, IT services, tourism, banking to ASEAN countries. So that is why we have established a bilateral trade agreement with ASEAN, and we have established free trade agreements with Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. Okay. So what is the basic difference between bilateral? Yes, you are right, Neeraj. We have found in Jammu and Kashmir lithium in large quantity, and by God's grace, that will help India to have less reliance on the on other countries, and we want that. Yes. Unilateral means it is imposed. It is imposed. आपको accept करना है, आप करो, otherwise do not do it. Unilateral is one way. There is no negotiation as such. Okay, so unilateral is one way. So what is unilateral? Unilateral, bilateral, and unilateral. It's not only about number of people or countries or parties. It bilateral needs at least two. Like we have shared free trade agreements हो सकते हैं, जैसे इंडिया का सिंगापुर के साथ है, मलेशिया के साथ है, कनाडा के साथ है, यूएई के साथ है, और it can be one country, India, and ASEAN group of countries. So that can also be bilateral. Okay. So unilateral contracts only is an obligation. So Sayed, it's an obligation. It's not like a negotiation. You do not have a power to negotiate. So it's only about obligation. The other difference might be like unilateral contracts. One offering the deal promises that we buy your services today, but not necessarily you should buy our services today. हो सकता है future में आप ले लो, but not at present. So that is why bilateral is both ways. Is upfront exchange. If I'm you get from. So if we have a agreement with ASEAN countries also expect कि अगर हमारे चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स वहां जाके सर्विसेज दें, हमारे डॉक्टर्स वहां जाके सर्विसेज दें, at the same time ASEAN countries will also provide us, will go for maybe products, maybe services. Okay, so depending on what they have, more efficient manner. So हमने comparative cost किया था, आपको याद है comparative cost theory? So it is a game of comparative cost. The one who has comparative cost benefit, they'll go for exporting and the other will go for importing it. So that is how it works. So what is unilateral trade? Given in your module also, this is generalized system of preference. Generalized system of preference is normally, it is adopted by developed countries. So just say GS, generalized system of preference is a, yaad rakhiye, it is a unilateral trade agreement. And this unilateral trade agreement is about, it was established in 1974. And this generalized system of preference promotes economic development. Why? Because it reduces duties. So countries, they gain, especially developing countries and underdeveloped countries, they gain because it is favored by developed countries. So US ने 119 beneficiary countries shortlist की. And with them they have established this generalized system of preference. So where they go for, so beneficiary countries, development in beneficiary countries by helping these countries. So US is helping those underdeveloped countries, 119 designated countries, where they go for getting their goods at a subsidized. So they tell their producers in their country that अगर आप in 119 countries से import करेंगे, तो we'll give you import subsidies, so you can buy at a very low price. Okay, so this is how unilateral trade agreements happen, and that's the significance of generalized system of preference adopted by developed countries, especially like US, and has gone for 119 developing countries or underdeveloped countries, establishing a unilateral trade agreement. Bilateral trade agreement आपसे share कर दिया मैंने. It happens between two countries or one country and group of countries. So what is the basic idea behind it? It is to lower down the trade barriers. You know, trade barriers we have shared. Trade barriers are tariff. Tariff can be export tariffs, import tariffs, subsidies. Other are trade barriers. You create trade barriers. You can create non-tariff trade barriers also. So to reduce the trade barriers between two countries and to result in economic integration, that means if my disposable in the country, if my disposable income in the country is less, if my per capita income is less, if I have less technology, मेरे पास technology is not that efficient, मेरे पास, and I do not have best of the labor force in terms of skill. So that leads to economic integration by the trade agreements. Obviously, countries will go for trade agreement जब दोनों countries को benefit होगा. It's not like that one way, isn't it? So we say that unilateral trade agreement, US is favoring developing countries, but US को भी तो benefit मिल रहा है. They are getting cheap labor. They are getting labor at a low cost. So that is also helping them. So it's not that other countries not gaining. They gain always. Okay. So that's about bilateral trade agreements. So bilateral trade agreements is between two nations or between one group of nation and the one country. So we have already shared that. It's basically to have a standardized business operations. So they lay down, we have shared initially, trade agreement hota kya hai? जिसमें norms pre-decided होते हैं between countries and they have to adhere to it. एक बार आपने agreement sign किया, then you are bound to go for it. And this is how it works. So political leaders, Ministry of Commerce, and other stakeholders, they get involved into it. सारा nitty-gritty decide करके then they decide about, yes, we want to enter into this trade agreement और इसका ये benefit होगा. Okay, so they basically trade agreement helps to decrease tariffs and other trade taxes, and it helps countries to bring competitive price, to bring innovations, to help people get jobs, and reduce disparity in the countries. One country is highly developed, other countries highly underdeveloped. So rich and poor countries, the gap gradually it helps to decrease. That is why we say today, you might have heard government of India saying that we will be becoming developed country very soon. So abhi to hum developing hai, so we'll become developed countries. Developed country, that is what we are saying. Okay. So countries, what is the benefit of bilateral? आपकी country में कोई dump नहीं करेगा cheap goods. So they will not be dumping. So dumping of products will be, probability will be less. इसकी probability less हो जाएगी. So that means your country products will be, your country, your players in the country, producers, small players will not suffer. Then they will not go for practicing unfair subsidies. So अपनी country के raw material के लिए, production के लिए, they will not go for subsidizing it. So that will also be a good thing. If you go for entering into bilateral trade agreement, you will have more competitive advantage by entering into such kind of agreement, because there will be standardization of rules and regulations होंगे, labor standards more defined होंगे, labor laws defined होंगे, environment will be more helpful for the country. So this is how you will become more innovative. So this is how nobody will go for stealing your technology and others. So this is how benefits you derive from bilateral trade agreements. Okay, so companies benefits, it creates job, it brings standardization, it improves health of the country, and it brings economic integration to the world. Disadvantages क्या हो सकते हैं? Disadvantages can be in the terms of that powerful industries can become more powerful, isn't it? Those who can produce, those who have best of the capital, those who have best of the technology, those who can afford to buy better technology, they'll do very well, and small companies will lose. We have shared when we were talking about international trade prior. So bilateral trade agreements can lead to sometimes loss to the small players. Big players may gain and small may incur loss. Okay. Now, free trade agreement. So what are the free trade agreement example? Free trade agreement can be, for example, this USMCA, that is United States, Mexico, Canada. So this is the trade agreement, which is a free trade agreement between these countries. And what kind of, so what is helping them? So it's beneficial. See, it is beneficial to, mutually beneficial for North America workers, farmers, and businesses. So this free trade agreement helps Mexico, Canada, and North America to have a deal where all of them are gaining through this free trade agreement. We have already shared what is free trade agreement. No tariffs, no trades between these countries, between the members. So in तीनों के बीच में transaction होगा, countries के बीच में, there will be no barriers. But if Canada wants to transact with any other country, they can set its own norms. That is a free trade agreement we have already shared. Okay, I hope it is clear to all of you. What is preferential trade agreement? Preferential trade agreement is that in this, you go for us giving preference to one particular parameter to the country, and go for establishing a trade between that country. So preferential trade agreement is a unilateral trade preference. Unilateral trade preference means it is only for one segment which you go for, and generalized system of preferences which are also part of the preferential tariffs. Preferential tariff, we have seen 100+ 100 plus countries, US has gone for giving preferential treatment to developing countries. That is preferential trade agreement. So it is a unilateral trade agreement which happens, which is a part of this preferential tariffs given to developing countries, and it is a part of generalized system of preferences. So preferential trade agreement is unilateral between one country to the other country. Regional trade agreements are like BRICS we have. Okay, ASEAN we have. These are regional trade agreements where you go for a specific region, you go for establishing a relationship on a specific parameters, political front, economic front, and other fronts. So ASEAN can be part of regional trade agreement. The countries, they go for working together politically uh, for trade benefits. Okay, so they work together and they establish. So sometimes when countries, they feel that you have G7, you have G8 countries, ये powerful countries हैं, इनका एक regional trade agreement है, so they gain through that. Similarly, developing countries, they thought, ASEAN countries, they thought that we are Asian countries, let us go for making regional trade agreement so that within the region, we can gain through this. So these regional trade agreements are deviating from the WTO norms. अभी हम share करेंगे WTO, आपको पता चलेगा. WTO says that all the members of WTO should be treated at par. But despite WTO members, these countries frame regional trade agreements. And once they frame regional trade agreements, they go for favoring each other. And that is उस केस में आप WTO norm से deviate कर रहे हैं, isn't it? Because as per WTO member, that all the members have to practice same trade policies. But despite being a member, आप WTO के member हैं, उसके बाद भी आपने एक regional trade agreement बना लिया between a group of countries, and where you go for establishing new norms, जो कुछ different हैं WTO member norms से. So this is how it works. So regional trade agreements are based on two or more partners constituting together for their mutual or the trade benefits. Okay. So what is the difference between free trade agreement and preferential trade agreement? We have shared. Free trade agreement is India and Vietnam is a free trade agreement. दोनों countries को benefit है. With India and Vietnam is a bilateral trade agreements. Because of this, you see the exports are gaining. India is gaining export proceed USD 3.48 billion. हमारा export increase हो गया in to Vietnam from 3.48 billion to 11 billion. Can you see this? It has happened because of the free trade agreement. So India has gained a lot, and it was expected to reach to 15 billion by 2022. So India is gaining from Vietnam and Vietnam is gaining from India. So it is a quality regional and bilateral trade agreement. Okay, so regional because we are in the same region, no? But it is between two players. So you can go for establishing two. India and Pakistan, Manoj, there is a concept of negative list. So India or Pakistan में कोई भी deal होता है, whether it is about FDI, there has to be approved from the Department of Investment Trade body. They cannot enter. So because you know Pakistan के साथ हमारे relations कैसे हैं, so we do not have that kind of relationship in terms of. So this is about the free trade agreement. So India के free trade agreement किस country के साथ हैं आप देखिए. We have with Thailand. Recent we have with UAE also. We have with Canada also. जो इसमें आपको नहीं मिलेगा. So Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia. You have with the Philippines, Darussalam, Thailand. So we have free trade agreements, and this list is increasing day by day over the period of time. Okay. Trade agreements can be multilateral, but it can also be with same condition tariffs with all the countries, or can be differentiated. Depends trade agreement, Neeraj, what kind of trade agreement you have. If it is a free trade agreement, within multilateral, you can have free trade agreement between countries, which has to be safe. or rather you eliminate the tariffs. And if you go for with other countries, then you can go for different norms. So it depends which kind of agreement you are entering into. Okay, so you have trade blocks. What are trade blocks? Trade blocks are the blocks where countries they go for deciding about that is zone May, the trade norms will be decided together. So trade block is an intergovernment agreement. Do remember. Countries, government of different countries, they decide about. So ये normally politically driven होता है, and then it goes for commerce or the trade driven. Okay, so what kind of political relationship you share between countries, and then you go for establishing. So this is about intergovernment organization where barriers to trade are reduced or eliminated. So basically, when you share a good relationship with a country, then you establish a trade bloc, and in this trade bloc, you can eliminate trade barriers and can go for promoting trade. What is the plus of trade bloc? Trade bloc means have liberal rules for member countries and a separate set of rules for the non-member countries. So within the trade bloc, you can have simple rules or rather liberal rules, but not within the trade bloc. Outside the trade bloc, then you go for having little bit stringent norms. So this is how it works. So they facilitate trade to member countries or the group of countries, but they create barriers and block the trade of non-member. What are they doing? They favor trade within the bloc, but they create barriers for non-members. So non-members are not able to enter into this, and this is beneficial for the trade members only, trade bloc members only. So this is how they work. So trade blocs have their own administrative and regulatory bodies and have some political goals also. So this is how it is different. So what we have here, multilateral trade agreements or a bilateral trade agreement, unilateral trade, more towards trade. This is with respect to the political gains also when countries they go for align together. Okay, so the purpose of the trade bloc is to free trade and moving from the protectionist approach, but this more governed by political equation and to support within the trade bloc, but to restrict others. So this is the trade bloc. Okay, BRICS is the trade bloc. BRICS is a trade bloc. Why BRICS is a trade bloc? Because you see what kind of relationship BRICS countries are having. BRICS countries are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Inka political relation is also equally important. They are working on having a currency which can be helpful to transact between these countries. Their economic development is also interdependent. A country cannot forgo the other country. Shipment, exports, imports, technology, they are all dependent on each other. This is the trade bloc. So they will support each other in this trade bloc, but for others, they'll create barriers. So ASEAN is a trade bloc, BRICS is a trade bloc, NAFTA is a trade bloc. So these are the trade blocs which are created for a specific objective and with political consensus of the countries, because it's very important that politically also they should be connected. Okay. So economic and monetary union मैंने आपको बता दिया है. Economic and सही example of preferential trade agreement बताया तो बेटा preferential trade agreement is जो US करता है. US is doing unilateral trade agreement for 100+ countries by giving them preferential benefits. From these 100+ countries, 109 or something was there. You just see the figure. Those countries will go for favoring them, giving them preferential treatment. That is a preferential trade. So वो unilateral में होता है. Bilateral is about Bilateral can be, which is just say, अभी हमने बात की free trade agreement between India and Vietnam, India and Malaysia, India and Singapore, India and UAE. So that can be bilateral between two countries. Okay. So Mohammed is asking why only 5 countries for BRICS. Mohammed, if you look at these 5 countries, you see Brazil is a country which has immense potential. Russia is a country which is a powerful player in the world market. Plus, they have competence in oil and defense. India is a country which is rich in labor force, technology, and China is a country which has a solid manufacturing base, and they are a major contributor in global value chain. And South Africa is emerging market. So South Africa was recently added few years back. So these all players have same objective that we want to grow. हमको economic development करना है because they have the potential but yet not tap the full potential. Okay. So economic and monetary union is example. सबसे अच्छा आपको बताया is European Union is the best example of this. European Union is the best example of economic and monetary union. यहाँ पे currency same है, यहाँ पे labor and transaction trade norms same है. Any country transacting to European Union will have the same norms. Yes. Any country within this European Union transacting, they will be using euro as a currency. This is about economic and monetary union. They have the same taxation norms. That is why Brexit happened, no? अगर आपने पढ़ा also Brexit, why it happened. I do not have that much time to share with the people, but why Brexit happened? Brexit happened because European Union, as such, London is a part of Europe, no, but they never adopted this euro currency. They followed GBP. GBP is Great Britain pound. But despite having different currency, people from European unions would move to London because this was about economic union. And since economic union, so they could move from European Union to London. And since people could move, so people in London, they were losing jobs. So unemployment was increasing in Britain. So they decided about कि currency तो हम different रखी है. अब now we want to exit this European Union zone also. So they exited from this European Union. So अब कोई भी country अगर London या Britain से trade करेगा, उसके लिए norms altogether different होंगे as compared to transacting with European countries. Because now this is not part of this economic union. Okay, so London or Britain is not part of economic union. Now they have exited from this Brexit because of the Brexit. What is common markets? Yes, and potential also, Manoj. So common markets, what are common markets? Common markets follow free passage of labor, capital. That means one country to another country. You can move from one country to another, having a common market. So several countries adopted common external tariffs. Common external tariffs means we'll have same tariff. Again, we are back to European Union. So it's a common market. So any country in European Union, any country you transact in European Union, you will have same tax norms. You will have same currency. You have free mobility of people. So common external tariffs is common market. Okay. So in a common market, countries also free trade and free movement of labor and capital among the members of the group. The trade agreement is aimed at providing improved economic benefits to all the members of the common. So all the European countries are getting benefit. If one is doing well, other is not doing well, they can always exchange goods and services. And they can gain benefit from this. Okay. So this is, you can see here. Now your questions, what is your question? I've already answered your question. Trade bloc is driven by political leaders, free for some stringent. Is driven by political leaders, free for some stringent. Your question itself is not defined properly. What do you want to ask? Be very clear about what you want to ask. So Bhumika, we have already shared preferential trade agreement. How many times I have to tell you? Preferential trade agreements basically means what? If India is putting restrictions on imports from China for toys, plastic toys, we have some solid reason to see that is a unique preferential trade is that. So tariffs, agar aap increase kar rahe, that is not preferential trade agreement. But if US is giving benefits to developing countries for exporting their goods to US at a subsidized rate, that is known as preferential treatment given to developing countries by US. So that is why it is unilateral. Okay. Now, if you look at this, you can see here what we have shared. So this is about economic integration. So economic integration, one of you were asking about. So we can see here, if you look at on this, you see in terms of integration, integration is lowest in free trade. Free trade means the countries are there only for tariff benefits, like ASEAN. Partially ASEAN is there, but you have United States, Mexico, and Canada is here for free trade. Free trade basically is confining to tariffs. So tariff benefits. So complexity is minimum because you are only confining about tariffs. And integration is also minimum. Yes. Now, once you go to customs union is you gain tariff benefits also and common external tariffs. So anyone outside this transacting within the custom union countries, they'll have the same kind of tariff norms. That is common external. So complexity बढ़ गई and economic integration also goes up because these countries are now more economically integrated because it's not only about tariff, it's about external players also going for tariff. Here, what was the thing? Here, within the members, tariff was eliminated. But outside members, there was no constraints कि आप outside members पे same tariff आपको impose करना है. But here, what is happening? Within you have the same benefits, but outside also the external tariffs are uniformly imposed on the players here. So that's the difference. यहाँ पे अगर suppose 3 countries हैं, so within these 3 countries, tariff norms will be same. But outside, one country can have different norms, may have 5% of tariff on one good and may have 10% of tariff on the other good. So this is about free trade. Here, custom union, it has to be 5% for any country going for transacting with us. Okay, so that is custom union. Common market. Common market is, it's not about only tariff within and outside. It is also about movement of capital and services. So capitals, you can move goods, you can move services, you can move technology, you can move here, anywhere within this. It was only about here trade. It was about trade here in terms of tariff. Here it is about capital, labor, services. That is common. Okay, economic union. Economic union is further one step ahead. So you are not only taking care about tariffs, you are not only taking care about economic integration within and for outside the same norms. You are not only taking care about movement of capital and services, you are also going for no barriers for internal trade, free movement of labor, Tax rates are harmonized, same taxation, common monetary and fiscal policy. That is economic union. So economic union comprises of, इसमें सारे features होंगे, free trade, custom unions, common market, economic union, because this is highest on the level, isn't it? So economic union में common market के features भी आप देखोगे. You will see custom unions also. You will see free trade component also. All the features will be there in economic union because this is a vast concept. Yes. प्रणव, अब आपको समझ में आ गया फ्री ट्रेड अग्रीमेंट एंड फ्री ट्रेड एरियाज. फ्री ट्रेड अग्रीमेंट, see, free trade agreements leads to free trade areas between the countries. Free trade agreements between the countries which makes free trade. Okay, so agreement is the step which leads to free trade benefits. Yes, Korea is also. Yes, we have with Korea also. तभी तो आप देखो सैमसंग है इंडिया में. दर्शन, we have with Korea also. Okay, so political union. Political union is the last stage. Common government. So common government. So political union is common. And since the political union of different countries, if you have a common government of different countries, how complex it will be, can you understand? So complexity goes up when you move from left to right. Because यहाँ पे केवल आप inner tariffs की बात कर रहे हैं. You are talking here about within the countries also, plus external tariff also same. हो सकता है कुछ countries इसके favor में हो, कुछ न हो. So you have to maintain unanimously. You have to decide. No, common market. You are not only talking about tariffs. You are also talking about capital and services. Okay, so national regularities same हो जाएंगे. Economic union में you are not only talking about tariffs. You are not only talking about capital and services, you're also talking about taxation. You're talking about fiscal policy, monetary policy, and political union, you're talking about common government. Extreme step. So this is how the complexity goes up as you move from trade, free trade to political unions. And integration also goes up because you're getting more and more integrated, no? Political union is there. When we talk about economic union, it is part of the political union. आप इकोनॉमिक यूनियन आपने कैसे डिसाइड किया कि एक ही करेंसी होगी 21 कंट्रीज की या 17 कंट्रीज की? दर्शन, for 17 countries to have one currency, you have a European Central Bank, ECB. You have one currency. You have one taxation. ये सब कैसे होगा? This will be only through political consensus. So all European countries have political consensus, political common government consensus. Here it is about consensus. Common government means common government consensus. तो सब एक जैसे सोचते हैं. That is about common government consensus. Okay, so that's the extreme step you can go for. So now we are talking about GATT. We have discussed about the basics. What is bilateral trade agreement? होता क्या है? What is trade agreement? Why countries enter into trade agreement? What is unilateral trade agreement? What is bilateral trade agreement? Bilateral, multilateral is almost close. Then you have the countries which they go for economic union क्या होता है? Customs union क्या होता है? Okay, so we have shared all those things. Preferential trade agreement. What is preferential trade agreement? And what is free trade agreement? So we have shared this. Now we are talking about GATT. GATT is General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. This is now not in existence in its form as GATT, but some features of this you will find in WTO also. So that is why we are referring to it. Okay. So GATT, what is GATT? GATT is General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. This General Agreement on Trade and Tariff 1948 में implement हुआ, 1994 तक existence में रहा. It started in this was initiated in 1948 and remained till 1994. 94 के बाद 95 में WTO आ गया. Okay, so we'll share why they moved from GATT to WTO. Journey from GATT to WTO. GATT से transition क्यों हुआ WTO में? And how WTO is better than GATT. Okay, so that we'll share. But सबसे पहले GATT came in 1948. It came in existence in 1948. It remained till 1994. इसमें basically it was more about tariffs related to goods. Okay. Absolutely, Manoj, absolutely. So that is why. So चाहे आप ट्रेड करें, चाहे आप वहां घूमने जाएं, so visa and everything is same. Entry is same, no? That is how. So, anyways, so we are talking about GATT. Okay, so GATT was came into existence in 48. It remained in 1994. उसके बाद आ गया WTO in 1995. So for those 47 years, it was in the form of organization or an agreement. Okay. WTO replaced GATT. Yes. WTO ने replace किया GATT को over the period of time. We'll share. तभी तो 94 के बाद 95 onwards WTO came. क्यों आया? We'll share that. Okay. So 47 years तक GATT was as an organization. As an organization or as a provisional agreement between countries, and it was about promoting trade only by taking care of tariffs for promoting goods tariffs, okay, confined to tariffs of goods only. And it was a organization which was working. Okay. So what was the idea of GATT, General Agreement on Trade? You see, as trade countries became more advanced, they started trading. Now, once trade started, it became more complex. It became more complex, and that is why they had to find out something which could take care exclusively on trade. So just as the countries developed again, just as a advancement होता गया, वैसे वैसे trade की complexity बढ़ती गई. Once the trade became more complex, they had to have some system in the world market जो कि trade को facilitate करे, trade को promote करे, trade को ease करे. So that was the idea of international trade के लिए GATT came into existence as an organization, number one. Okay. Number two, इसका intention क्या था? There was a body which was about World Bank, जो आज भी है, and International Monetary Fund. So they wanted to have something which would take care exclusively of trade. So World Bank takes care about what? Welfare and economic well-being of the country, of the world economy. International Monetary Fund ensures the financial stability, economic stability, isn't it? So they thought about for economic cooperation and economic integration, we should have something which can take care about trade. So that's why GATT came into existence. Okay. So how there were n number of trade rounds for GATT. So over 50 countries participated in negotiations to create an international trade organization. So World Bank tha and International Monetary Fund tha. So 50 countries started negotiating because trade was becoming more complex and they wanted some organization to facilitate trade. So 50 countries participated in negotiations and to make international trade organization, to create a body called International Trade Organization as a specialized agency of the United Nations. And the draft of International Trade Organization charter was framed. Okay. So these 50 countries decided about International Trade Organization as a special agency of United Nations to be framed. Idea was to promote trade. It extended beyond world trade. So it extended beyond world trade discipline to include rules on employment. So it was not only about trade disciplines, it was about employment. It was about commodity agreement, which commodity to be purchased, how much should be the quantum, what should be the quality, क्या उसका tariff होना चाहिए, क्या उसका mode of transaction होना चाहिए, everything. Restrictive business practices, international investments, and services. So international trade was extended towards these parameters: employment, commodities, business practices are ethical or not, or is favoring one country over the other, international investments, how international investment should happen. So currency will also come into picture, isn't it? Dollar, INR, and so on. So for almost half a century, GATT basic legal principles remained much as they were in 1948. Can you imagine? It came in existence in 1948, and for 50 years almost, the norms remain same. I hope you understand, in 50 years, trade changed, investments changed in the economy, employment changed, technology changed, everything changed, labor, capital, everything changed over the period of time. But GATT key rules and regulations same, right? Principles remain same. 50 years. Okay, there were addition in the form of section on development added in 1960s. So 1960s में इन्होंने कुछ new norms add किए. That was about plurilateral agreements. Plurilateral agreements means that the members of GATT were given an option that these are new norms. You want to follow it, you can follow it. Okay, so that is how plurilateral means. That was voluntarily in nature. So because of this, what happened over the years? Trade became complex. GATT countries were not ready to follow rules and regulations of GATT. And this resulted in GATT losing its sanctity. GATT existence ही doubtful हो गया because it was only about goods. And just as the market expands होते गए, employment complex होता गया, commodity market complex होता गया, business practices more difficult हो गई, international investments, currencies बहुत सारी involved हो गई. So things became, services का share बढ़ गया. So everything became so complex, and GATT principles were one and the same what they had laid down in 1948. This created problem. Okay, so international trade liberalization happened in leaps and bounds, but GATT could not match up with it, and so it's lost its credibility. And since countries were not having faith in it, trade had become complex, and it was only confined about goods. Isliye, they decided to come out with something else. So GATT success in reducing tariffs to low level with series of economic recessions in 1970s and 1980s. They said you reduce tariffs and there was economic recession. Recession means aggregate demand was too low. Now you are a country A, and in your country A, if the economic growth is on the downturn, economic growth हो नहीं रही है, that means investments are not happening, consumptions are not happening, और आप further tariffs reduce कर रहे हो. If you go for further reducing tariff, what is going to happen? Your country will be flooded with foreign goods. And once the country is flooded with foreign goods, what's going to happen? Your domestic players, unemployment in the country will further increase. And unemployment in the country increases means your GDP will further go down. And GATT was promoting reduced tariffs. So country didn't go for following tariffs. So उन्होंने tariffs को कम नहीं किया because recession था market में, recession, because of recession, they had to support their domestic players, no? How could they encourage foreign players to enter the country? So unemployment and constant factory. So what happened? Unemployment increased. There were many factories which were closed. Government invest in Europe and other American countries, seek bilateral market sharing. They wanted bilateral market sharing because it led to loss to them. And they wanted to offer subsidies. And they wanted to protect their agriculture sector. This all was against GATT norms. And that is why GATT lost its credibility and effectiveness. So, because of this, what happened? The GATT, there was Urgai round, and in this 1982, the group of ministers meeting was held with GATT members. This was held in Geneva, and the ministers decided to launch a negotiation campaign. Okay, and the major concern was agriculture. The member countries were concerned about agriculture, and they said that it was a total failure. So agriculture was not supported, and the agrarian economies were suffering. And this was the core agenda of this round. Okay, so WTO was replaced with was by GATT got replaced by WTO. So WTO replaced GATT as an international organization, and WTO umbrella treaty for trade in goods was updated in Argao round. Because of this, in 1994, the trade lawyers distinguished between GATT 1994 and updated parts of GATT in 1947, which was 48 it came into existence. But to get over this confusion later, GATT, some component of this remained in WTO, and in WTO was taken over in 1995. Okay. The General Agreement on Trade and Tariff was a multilateral trade agreement. So it was a trade agreement it was created in 1948. It was there till 1993. World Trade Organization was formed as a replacement in 1995 with the purpose of supervising and liberalizing international trade because trade was becoming more complex. And WTO was a permanent structure. It was a permanent structure. It was not just an organization or a multilateral agreement. So that was a plus of WTO over GATT. Number two, it took liberalized international trade into consideration, and WTO also monitored trade in services. GATT was only about goods. WTO also took care about services, and apart from services, it also took care about intellectual property rights. So goods ke alawa, it was also about services. It was about intellectual property rights. It was about liberalizing trade and also supervising trade. And it was a permanent structure. So this is how WTO was better than GATT, and that is why WTO replaced GATT in 1995. It came into existence. Okay, so this is how WTO came, and major factor was textile and agriculture, which were not taken care by, and services was not taken care by GATT. Apart from that, which was raised in Urgaon. Okay, so WTO from 1995 over the past 60 years, as you know, is a predecessor of GATT. It has helped to create a strong international trading system and has contributed to global economic growth. The members of WTO are 164, and of which 117 are developing countries. Okay. WTO activities are supported by Secretariat of 700 staff, and the leader is WTO Director General. Okay. This WTO Secretariat is located in Geneva, Switzerland, and they have an approximate budget of Swiss franc of 200 million. So Swiss franc, because it is in Switzerland, so Swiss franc is a currency of Switzerland, and that is 200 million. They have 3 official languages they take care about: English, French, and Spanish. Okay, so that's WTO with 164 members, and out of these 164 members, 117 are developing countries. how WTO takes decisions. So decisions are taken by consensus of the entire members, and the highest institutional body is ministerial conference. So this is the highest body in WTO. Then they have General Council. This General Council takes care about organization business on a regular basis. They go for organizing these meetings, okay? And General Council further comprises of all the members. These are subsidiary bodies within this framework. They are councils, committees, subcommittees. So these members together, they take decisions regarding WTO, any dispute, anything which is there related to decision making. Okay, so what is the role of WTO? The WTO takes care about negotiation for reduction or elimination of obstacles. So basically, they are trade facilitators. WTO का role क्या है? Trade facilitation. So what do? They help in negotiating or reduction or elimination, या तो minimize करना या zero down करना of trade barriers, maybe import tariffs, other barriers, and setting rules, making members to agree on rules, and ensuring that there is fair trade in the market. That's the specific objective of WTO. They take care about anti-dumping. Anti-dumping we had shared, you remember? Selling goods in the other country at less than so price of the good in other countries less than its average cost. That is dumping. And if a country goes for dumping, Acha, Manoj has found out Swiss franc की value भी कितनी है, very good. Okay, so anti-dumping is basically the price of the good. Suppose this is country A. We have done this. I'm just helping you to recap. Country A is producing a good X at rupees 100, that at the average cost. But when it sells to country B, it sells at rupees 80. This is dumping. It is selling less than its average cost. It's exporting to country B at 80 rupees when its average cost is 100 rupees. So because of this, if in country B, the cost of production for this good X is, let's say, 120, and the good is available at 80 rupees, what's going to happen because of this? अगर country B में उसका cost of production 120 rupees है good X का, और country B में good 80 rupees में मिल रहा है, what's going to happen? Many domestic players, those who are producing this X good, will be out of the market. They will become unemployed. They have to close their units. Isn't it? Factory workers will become unemployed and the units will be closed because they will not be able to sell at 80 rupees. So because of this, if 25% of domestic players will run into losses, they can go to WTO and say, and they will plead their case that the goods have been dumped by A in country B, in our country. So they go for anti-dumping duties. So country B will impose anti-dumping duties on country A. And once the anti-dumping duties are imposed, obviously the cost will go up. Cost goes up means this price, this good X, which is available at 80 rupees, we will be getting at 140 rupees. The countervailing duties and anti-dumping duties. Okay. Then subsidies. Subsidies, a country A goes for अपनी country के products के लिए आपने export subsidies दे दिया. We have shared this, no? When we were talking about, so you've given subsidies for your exports. And if you go for giving subsidies, if you go for giving subsidies to your exports, that means आपकी price कम होगी, your price goes down, means international market में जब आप compete करेंगे दूसरे player के साथ, so you will be selling at a low price. That is not ethically correct. So that is export subsidies, such kind of subsidies if government offers, that is also they take care about. So fair practice, fair trade practice is the core job of WTO. Countries should practice fair trade. Okay. Then they go for administrative and monitoring rule also. So they take care about administering also and monitoring also. The rules of trade, of goods, of services, and intellectual property rights, whatever rules and regulations have been laid down, जो बनाए गए हैं rules, जो agree किए हैं members ने, they should practice it. So they monitor, they implement and they monitor. They also review. They monitor and they review also. So they review the trade policies of members. What kind of policies they are practicing. So developed countries are supporting developing countries or not. Okay, so these measures are taken care by them. Okay, so this is how it works. So Darshan, please visit WTO site and you can see everything over there. Ministerial conference, they are the members. They are decided based on elected members. They are elected members. Okay, so this is because this is not organization now. It's a body which takes care about. So the team of members, they decide about their positions, and otherwise all the members have right to share their views. So monitoring and reviewing the trade policies of WTO members, they ensure that policies practiced by countries should be fair and transparent. It should not be something which is not clear to the other country and you hide some facts and figures. So trade practices should be fair, transparent, and it should be equal for the members. We should not differentiate between them. Okay. What the specific objectives of WTO? Specific objectives of WTO are they take care about dispute settlement. So अगर आप देखेंगे WTO की साइड पे, you will find US has filed many cases against India for seafood and others, that the food which has been given as seafood is sub quality, and India has filed many cases against China for dumping. So these are some disputes between the countries. So when there are disputes are there, then WTO job is to settle those disputes. So they go for dispute settlement. So dispute settlement where they ensure that the problem gets sorted out between the countries and trade can be facilitated. That's the role of specific job of WTO, to settle disputes between countries, and countries means I want to say members of WTO. It also helps to develop capacity of developing countries. So developing countries जैसे Africa है, Brazil hai. These countries, they need support. India needs support for agriculture, on infrastructure and other things. So they help to create capacity of developing countries by interacting with the country and member countries and then helping them to get support from the other countries. They assist the process of more number of members joining. So they are looking for some 30 countries who are yet not part of the organization, promoting the process so that they should become part of WTO. So that entire world countries are there in WTO, so that they follow norms and it becomes more easy for countries to trade, and trade practices become more fair. Okay. They also take care about economic research and collecting data, trade data for many other activities to support the players. Okay. And they also take care about educating public about what is the rule of WTO, what is the mission of WTO, what activities WTO undergoes. That's why I'm telling Darshan, you can go to WTO site. You will get many things. We are running short of time and this chapter is very lengthy. So what are the guiding principles of WTO? WTO guiding principles are about that let the trade be facilitated, open borders, guarantee of most favored nation principle. Members of WTO, they have this most favored nation principle. Most favored nation principle means all the members should be treated at par. You cannot differentiate one member from the other. And non-discriminatory treatment. You cannot go for within your country when you go for any member country importing or exporting to your country. The norm should be uniform. We will be sharing this as we proceed. Okay. Opening of national market to international trade. Open your economy to the world and encourage sustainable development. Do not grow at the cost of environment. Ensure people welfare, reduce poverty, promote peace and stability. That is also WTO takes care about. Because you understand, trade की वजह से war हो सकते हैं. आपने देखा अभी the conflict of interest between इराक पे बहुत बार अटैक हुआ. क्यों? Because that's a oil rich country. Why? That is why. Because उनके पास resources हैं and everybody wanted to capture their resources, oil reserves, isn't it? So trade is a very complex thing. It can lead to war. It can lead to unrest. It can lead to unequal distribution of income, can lead to poverty. It can lead to unemployment. It can lead to um, 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 stability. There are so many things which can happen if this trade imbalance, isn't it? So trade imbalance होगा तो rich country rich होती जाएगी, poor country poor होती जाएगी, and obviously this gap will lead to n number of problems for the world economy. So that is also WTO rule is also to ensure. वैसे तो ये World Bank takes care about this, isn't it? World Bank takes care about poverty है, welfare है, well-being है, stability है. IMF takes care about stability, but indirectly trade also affects this. So market should be open to the world market should be open. Developed countries should open their economy to developing countries. Even developing countries should open trade ke liye. They should open their gateways to the other country. That's why you see India is opening its gateways to other players. That's why we have so many. हमने discuss किया Apple. You know about Samsung. You know about Vodafone in India. You know about Uber in India. You know about Larsen and Toubro in India, isn't it? You know about HSBC in India. So we have opened our gateways to Marks and Spencer है आपके पास today. So there are so many options you have. So we have also opened our gate to rest the world. So overall objective of WTO, what is the overall objective of WTO? Objective of WTO is to improve living standard. Obviously trade होगा तो standard of living, quality of life improves, jobs create होंगे, creation of jobs, people will be more happy and life will become more simple and easy, isn't it? Simple though I don't know, but yes, easy definitely. WTO operates a global system of trade, rules and regulation and helps developing countries build their trade. So preferential trade is part of developing countries, which is given by WTO, preferential trade, okay? It also provides a forum for its member to negotiate trade, to resolve trade problems they face with each other. So negotiation also and resolving problem also is taken care by WTO. So these are objectives of WTO. It improves people's life. Okay, so it increases real income. It promotes goods and services trade. It leads to optimum utilization of resources. Then WTO from last like almost 60 years has also improved, has incorporated, I should say, has incorporated better norms. जैसे जैसे ट्रेड रीडिफाइन होता जा रहा है वैसे वैसे ट्रेड के challenges बढ़ते जा रहे हैं and challenges are becoming, it is becoming more challenging for WTO also, isn't it? So they also, like you see today, it's a world of e-commerce. अब WTO ने गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज को सर्विसेज की कैटेगरी में WTO ने ई कॉमर्स को उस हद तक इन्वॉल्व नहीं किया, बट इट इज बिकमिंग मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स टुडे and that is why WTO has to, that's a challenge for it today. So the way the countries are trading, the complexity of trade is increasing, Similarly, challenges for WTO is also increasing over the period of time. So what is the core fulcrum of WTO? WTO agreements, they establish agreements, they help in terms of agreements, they help in negotiation, and they establish trade relationship between countries. So these WTO agreements, one of you were asking, can countries go for breaching the agreement? So these are contracts. Okay, so WTO agreements are contracts, and these documents provide the rules for international commerce and bind governments. So you are bound by the norms to keep trade policies within the agreed limits. So you have to practice as per the agreement. The goal is to help producers of goods and services, exporters, importers, so that they can conduct their business, and it can help people to raise their standard of living, help governments to meet their social and environmental objectives. So that is WTO agreements is all about. Helps in opening trade, removing inequality or reducing inequality, settling disputes. It helps to settle disputes between the countries. And this is what most favored nation, which we were talking about. I would take break for 10 minutes and then we'll take this. Okay? Having bad throat, so just for 10 minutes we'll take break and then we'll start with this. All WTO members are, to leave you with this, all the WTO members are considered, have to practice most favored nation law. Okay? So let's take break for 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, so I told you that before break that we will be sharing most favored nation. See, this is the most important parameter for the members of WTO. WTO members के लिए बहुत ही एक important parameter है. Reason being, suppose let's say that this is WTO member. India is a WTO member, isn't it? So India is a WTO member. I'm sorry for this, my handwriting. So India is a WTO member, and India goes for trading with some country which is non-WTO member. Okay, let's say this is country X, which is not WTO member. So this is not WTO member. And India goes for offering, goes for selling the good to, or let's say, is imposing tariff on this country at the rate of 5%. Okay, so to buy the good from this country, it is imposing tariff of 5%. Now, since WTO is a member, and let's say Malaysia, okay, forget about Malaysia because it's a free trade agreement. Let's say one country which is not a part of free trade agreement, or a country which is Y. Okay, this is also WTO member. Now, if India wants to get the good from this country, or wants its domestic players to import from this country, has to go for 5% tariff only. It cannot go for 7%. Are you getting it? This is the concept of most favored nation. What is most favored nation? India, सबसे पहले याद रखिए, India is a WTO member. So MF most favored nation rule says if WTO member A. So in this case, let's say India agrees in negotiation with country B. This country B is not a WTO member. Okay, let's assume if it is a WTO member, then so anyways it is applicable. But if it is not a WTO member, then in that case, to reduce the tariff on product X to 5%. So a country says that if people of country A will buy good from country B, the import duty will be 5%. Okay, import duty will be 5%. Now, if this is a scenario, hello. So if this is the scenario, in this case, what's going to happen? This case, what's going to happen? Then the country B, since country A is offering to B at 5%, so it has to offer to any other country which is a WTO member at 5%. This is known as most favored nation law. Okay, so this is clear. So all the members of WTO, yes, Manoj. So Iran and Sudan. So in that case, all those members of WTO are supposed to follow most favored nation norm or treat all members at par. Plus, if they offer to outside member some benefit, the same benefit has to be offered to the WTO member. That is most favored nation norm. Okay. What is national treatment principle? So this is another important parameter, national treatment principle. National treatment principle means that if you can see here, if a country, member country A, reduces the import tariff on product X from 10% to 5%. Let's say India reduces import tariff from 10% to 5%, but imposes a 5% domestic consumption tax. That means a country has reduced, suppose we are importing something from China. So we have reduced import tariff on China from 10% to 5%. Okay. So import tariff has been reduced on from 10 to 5%. That means reduction of 5%. But when this will be sold in the market, then the 5% tax will be imposed. आप समझ रहे हो? यहाँ पे आपने कम किया and यहाँ पे you have added it. So that means the tax is actually 10%, not 5%. Why you have done this? Because you want that this Chinese player should not capture Indian market. So this, when you are doing this, then in that case, it is you are favoring your domestic player, but you are, or rather you are not giving both the players the same page. You are not treating both at the same page. Yes, since you are not treating both at the same page, that means you are discriminating. And this discrimination is not acceptable as per national treatment principle. Is it clear? To close this, how to close this? Give me a second. Okay. So can you see my screen? Okay, I'll explain it again. Can you see my screen? One of you please say yes. Okay, so what is national treatment principle? National treatment principle is country A and country B are WTO members. They have to practice national treatment principle. National treatment principle means if country A is importing some good from country B. Okay, so B is the exporter and A is the importer. Country A import कर रही है B से और B export कर रही है. अब as per WTO norms, आपकी market में this product, you have two players. You have one domestic player and the other one is importer, and both of them are selling toy. Okay. Now this one, the one who is importing, आपने उस पे import duty लगा दी थी initially 10%. So if the cost would have been 100 rupees, cost will go to 110. Yes. इसके लिए 110 cost हो जाएगी. If it goes to, and this player, and since इसका cost 105 है, so the domestic player who's not going to import, cost is 105, and the one who's importing, you want this player should not be able to come. You want to discourage import. So that is why you impose 10% tax on this, because you are importing from country B. So that means your cost will go to 110. And the domestic player is selling at what price? 100 is having 105. That means both the players, you are not giving the same ground, or you are not giving the same facility. You are protecting your domestic player and you are discouraging the foreign player. So what, in this case, what you will do? You will act very smart. What will you do? You will say that import tariff is 5%. If import tariff is 5%, what will be the price? What will be the cost? Cost will be 105. But then you say that we'll put further 5% at the rate of 5% on this when you go for this consumption. So those who will consume, they will pay 5% on this. Now what's going to happen? The price will shoot up. So basically you're discouraging these import in country and you are favoring your domestic player. You're not giving them the same ground to compete in India and to cater to Indian players. This is known as deviating from national treatment principle. So Amazon in India and Flipkart in India, you cannot go for giving extra benefit to tariff and taxes are same, Mohit. Tariff and taxes are same. Tariff can be tariff and taxes are same. We had discussed prior classes. आप नहीं थे क्या? So anyways, when we talk about this national treatment policy, I was talking about Amazon and Flipkart. Whatever norms are applicable for Amazon, the same norms have to be, sorry, for Flipkart, the same norms have to be applicable for Amazon. अगर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया फ्लिपकार्ट के लिए कुछ नॉर्म्स रिलैक्स करती है और Amazon के लिए कुछ stringent norms करती है, then they are not giving them same kind of treatment. This is known as deviating from national treatment principle. So national treatment principle says, you look at this last line, national treatment principle says, is the rule to eliminate hidden domestic barriers to trade by requiring WTO members to accord imported products treatment no less favorable than accorded to products of national origin. जितना importance आप अपने national product को देते हो, उतना ही importance आप imported product को देते हो. No less favorable than. That is known as national treatment principle. Okay. So national treatment principle is if any player coming to India that is a member of WTO and you are also a member, then you have to give them the same treatment what you are giving to a domestic player. That is national treatment principle. Is it clear now? Jay, is it clear now? Okay. So now next we are discussing about agreement on agriculture. Agreement on agriculture. See, what is the basic difference between developed countries and developing countries? Doha Round Agreement. इसका core ये है कि India and developing countries are relying on agriculture. So these countries are relying on agriculture. They want support. But the US and others says, no, you do not go for giving support. Because आप support दे रहे हैं, that is why it is leading to what? It is leading to loss of US exports in India. आप अपने farmers को support कर रहे हैं, you are giving them subsidies, you are supporting them, and that is why what's happening? Because of that, the US exporters goods are becoming expensive in India, और वो यहाँ पे sell नहीं कर पा रहे. So that is this agreement in agriculture came in 1995 when WTO was formed, and idea was to reduce subsidies and trade barriers to make markets more fair and competitive. That is what WTO rule is all about. It provided members to continue negotiations to reform and ensure based on food security and the environment. Because India क्या कहता है? India कहता है कि we have many poor people who cannot afford to buy wheat or paddy at a low price. इसीलिए हमको subsidies देना must है. That is why we are bound to give subsidies. So it's a matter of food security or the basic requirement of the people. We cannot go for it. And sometimes it is about environment. So environment is getting adversely affected, and that's why we restrict the other player to enter the country. Okay. So this 2015, it was decided to abolish agriculture export subsidies and the new rules for other forms of farm export support. So this was decided in 2015 कि agriculture export में आप subsidies नहीं देंगे. So what is going to happen if agriculture export subsidies are removed? If you remove export subsidies, the cost of production of agriculture goods will increase. Agriculture goods increases means the price in international market will be higher than the other players. So if this is price of wheat of India's, and this is the price of wheat of China or Ukraine, then in that case, what will happen? India's price will be higher because you have removed export subsidies. India will not be able to sell in the market and you will lose the market share. So that is what they said, that you remove export subsidies or developing countries के लिए बहुत बड़ा challenge हो गया. So what are the basic factors because of which, what are the three reasons because of which developed countries, they go for filing case against India and other developing countries? They say on three grounds. or they can go to WTO for 3 grounds that agriculture में आप favor कर रहे हो अपने domestic players को, and that is what the agriculture agreement norm is all about. So it says that there can be 3 form of distortion. Distortion मतलब आप fair practice नहीं कर रहे हैं. Okay? The use of trade restrictions such as tariffs on imports. So you go for putting high import duties. If you put high import duties, means you're restricting the other player to enter in the market. So you're creating market restrictions, market access restrictions to the other player by keeping your import tariffs high. If you keep import tariffs high, हमने पढ़ा है. If you keep import tariffs high, the price will increase because the price increases that will be passed on to consumer, and consumer will be buying at a higher price, and that will result in lowering down the disposable income of the people, isn't it? So market access control kiya through tariffs and on imports. That is one way. Domestic support. Other way how a country can restrict agriculture proceeds to come to the country, they can give subsidies. जैसे हम देते हैं इंडिया में MSPs, minimum support price. So you go for support program like minimum support price. You give subsidies on, we used to give on fertilizers, we give it on seeds and others, isn't it? So subsidies, we give subsidies and we propose minimum support price. So what happens because of that? This distorts trade. So the second factor is domestic support. This is bad. This is bad. What about export? The use of export subsidies. When you produce and you give subsidies for exports, further आप market में अपने export को subsidize कर रहे हैं, उसको competitive बना रहे हैं. That is also against. So this is agriculture agreement, which talks about that if countries are practicing this, they should stop this because इसकी वजह से market में agriculture products का exports का distortion होता है. Distortion means the market is not working in the fair manner. Okay, so that is the this framework is all about. So under the agreement, WTO members agree to schedule or list of commitments that set limits on tariffs. So आप tariffs की limit fix कर देते हैं. As per WTO agreement, they can apply to individual products and on levels of domestic support and export subsidies. So you can apply tariffs, you can give subsidies, you can go for export subsidies, but at different level, depending upon the requirement. So this is what has been decided as per the agriculture agreement. Okay. So we'll talk about TRIPS. Sudhanshu will talk about TRIPS. Have patience. So agriculture trade reforms. What are the agriculture trade reforms basically all about? So WTO members adopted important decisions on agriculture in 2015 to abolish subsidies for farm exports, on public stocking for food security purposes, special safeguard mechanism of developing countries, and trade rule for cotton. So cotton, textile, and food. ये major challenges हैं developing countries के, for which they look for support from developed countries and from WTO. So this, you remember, we had shared sanitary and phytosanitary tariffs and measures जब हम non-tariff barriers की बात कर रहे थे. So we had discussed this sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So in this case, this agreement talks about WTO members to set their own standards on food safety and animal and plant health. So India can say that for Indians, consuming too much of sugar is bad. So अगर Pepsi India में they want to sell in India Pepsi, they should have less sugar content. अगर ज़्यादा sugar content है, this is affecting health of the people, so we will not allow this. Okay, so this is one. So you can go for certain drugs which we are importing in India. We can say that this is creating a lack of resistance in human beings, and it is creating adverse impact on people. So we will not buy it. Just like COVID vaccine के लिए, many countries had gone for analyzing it. उसके बाद उन्होंने approval दिया कि we want to buy vaccine, because this is as per the phytosanitary measures. So these are agreement where the countries, but sometimes what happens, some countries, they misuse it. Misuse in terms of कि आपका product substandard है, the way you have produced is wrong, it is affecting the environment. Some kind of non-tariff barriers they can impose through sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So in that case, those countries on whom this has been imposed, they can go to WTO for settlement. So this is the SPS agreement, sanitary and phytosanitary agreement of WTO members, which they have to practice, which is related to international standard, guidelines and recommendations, but may adopt higher level of protection if there's scientific justification. So if you think that it is harmful, there's some risk, then you can take these measures. Otherwise, if you go for this, then you will be accountable, or the country can go to dispute settlement to WTO. Okay. So use different methods of control, inspection, approval, procedures, compliance. जैसे इंडिया में बहुत संबंधित licensing norms थे बहुत stringent, and that is why we were restricting other players to enter in India. So these are some measures which need to be avoided for unnecessary barriers to trade. So these are non-tariff barriers, isn't it? You fix up high standards, you fix up compliance norms, you fix up licensing norms, and so many other factors, inspection and approval. उसमें आप बहुत time लगा दो. You talk about packaging, shelf life of the product, and so many other things. So this is how these measures are taken by countries to, in a non-tariff barrier form, and restrict other players to enter. So this is the if this happens, then the country can go to WTO for the dispute settlement. Okay, just India against many cases, US has filed against seafood. उसका quality ठीक नहीं है, उसका SPS is sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Phytosanitary is PS is phytosanitary and S is sanitary. Okay. So this is about, you may not be able to see it right now, but once I'll upload it, you can see here. It talks about cyto and phytosanitary measures, sanitary measures, which WTO takes care about. TBT is technical barrier trade measures. Technical trade barriers we had shared, if you remember, about technical trade barriers where they go for barriers in trade. Technical trade barriers which say technology is not up to the mark, the processing has not been done properly, and so many other factors which would go. So what they say, WTO has come out with the norms कि आपको अपना website पे clearly define करना पड़ेगा. These are our norms. This for this product, and this is what we look for forward. Once you define that, obviously everything is in black and white. So they want everything to be in black and white. ऐसे आप कुछ चीजें ऐसे नहीं, books में आपने कुछ और बोला, when the trade happens you say something else. So everything should be transparent. Bring transparency and bring uniformity. And digitalization has made it more simple. So आप अपना portal बनाइए, उस पे सब black and white में बताइए what are your specifications, what are you looking for, and according what technical guidelines you have, and according, so data breach and other what we are talking today about. Government is talking about Netflix ka content and everything. So they have to be in very black and white. They have to share. ये होना चाहिए, ये नहीं होना चाहिए. So this is what is about. WTO is giving guidelines to all member countries that so that dispute settlement can be done with ease, and there should not be dispute only, first and the foremost, isn't it? Dispute पहली बात तो होना ही नहीं चाहिए. अगर हो तो उसका settlement easy हो जाए, because आपके पास suffice documents होंगे to justify कि ये country का ये specifications है, आपने ये meet नहीं किया, इसीलिए they have gone for restricting your product. So now talking about TRIMS, Sudhanshu was asking about TRIMS and TRIMS. Okay, TRIMS is trade-related investment measures. Trade-related investment measures are related to countries' investments in any form of investment, technology investment, capital investment. So any dispute related to that is settled through trade-related investment measures. The guidelines are given in TRIMS for countries, trade-related investment measures. What the member countries have to practice. उनको guidelines इसमें दी जाती है. Framework is there, and each country has to practice this. We have already shared most favored nation, and we have shared national treatment principle. So most favored nation and national treatment principle के accordingly, अगर आपकी country में कुछ norms हैं investments के, तो वो across the board same होने चाहिए. अगर नहीं होगा तो then it will be reported through trade-related investment measures, where WTO will take some measures. Okay, so any dispute which is there will be settled through this. आपने quantitative restrictions डाल दिए, price के respect में restrictions डाल दिए. Yeah, you talk about some investment restrictions in a manner which you are differentiating A country का B country से, या अपने players का with respect domestic players का international players से. So that is all reported in TRIMS. Okay. So subsidies and countervailing measures. TRIPS is related intellectual property rights. Okay. So investments are TRIMS, trade-related investment measures, and TRIPS is trade-related intellectual property rights. Intellectual property rights may be related to copyrights, patent rights, and others. So, जैसे हमने पहले भी शेयर किया था, India says that yoga is our. We have the right to say that it is our. We have generated this. We have initiated this. But US कहता है कि नहीं, power in yoga हमारा है. Isn't it? So these kind of intellectual property, movie content, if you see about some puts allegations about कि इंडिया के म्यूजिक जो है, मूवीज में जो म्यूजिक है वो आपने बॉलीवुड से हॉलीवुड से ले लिया है. सो दे कैन गो फॉर फाइलिंग, हॉलीवुड कैन गो फॉर फाइलिंग टू दिस दैट दे हैव टेकन देयर कंटेंट. सो कंटेंट है, लोगो है, सर्विसेज है, समथिंग विच इज रिलेटेड टू इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी राइट, पेटेंट है, कॉपीराइट्स है. फॉर दैट यू कैन रिपोर्ट to WTO under TRIPS. Okay, so member countries can report for this. Then subsidies and countervailing measures. Subsidies and countervailing measures. Subsidies, you are giving subsidies, unnecessary subsidies you are giving. Subsidies you are giving for specific enterprise. एक specific company को आप subsidies दे रहे हैं ताकि उसको benefit, undue benefit मिले, and others should not be able to compete. Okay, you are giving specific benefit to a targeted sector, or specific sector subsidize आप कर रहे हैं उसको. Okay, then you go for regional specific region. So for example, Chhattisgarh, for example, any specific region you go for subsidizing. इस region में आप कुछ भी produce करिए, we will give you subsidies. Or prohibited subsidies, government target export products or goods using natives for subsidization. So they say that we want to go for prohibited subsidies. What are prohibited subsidies? These are dependent on export performance. So if you feel that you want to buy this raw material from country A, जैसे अभी हम बात कर रहे थे solar cells या lithium batteries. So lithium batteries अगर आपकी cost of production कम करती है, so that is fine, you can go for import. But if you feel that this import can hamper your, तो उस केस में आप उसको बैन कर देते हैं. That is prohibited subsidy. So subsidies dependent upon export performance, and those contingent upon the use of indigenous content over imported goods. You want that you should use Indian content only rather than using imported goods. So you want to promote that the production, the entire value chain or the production of the goods should be happen in India rather than importing anything. जैसे अभी हमने कल बात की थी, day before yesterday we have spoken. Ministry of Defense ने 101 goods के लिए embargo कर दिया. Embargo means total ban. You cannot import from any country. So if you cannot import, that means you have to produce in your home country. So sometimes you totally prohibit and go for restricting the other player. So prohibited subsidies are dependent on exports. ओके, अपॉन एक्सपोर्ट परफॉर्मेंस, अगर आपको लगता है एक्सपोर्ट परफॉर्मेंस के को आपको प्रमोट करना है इंडियन गुड्स के थ्रू, सो देन यू गो फॉर टोटली प्रोहिबिटिंग द सब्सिडीज एंड नेटिव गुड्स के लिए टोटली सब्सिडाइज कर देंगे उसको. एंड एक्शनेबल सब्सिडीज आर, these are not total ban, but it is about countries to take countervailing measures. So when countries feel that आपने subsidies डाली है, you are giving undue benefit to your players, will go for countervailing subsidies. So subsidies can be both ways, from this also, from the host country also, from the other also. So any of these measures taken by any one country, and it proves कि इसकी वजह से जो दूसरा प्लेयर है उसकी कंट्री में बहुत एडवर्स इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है, then they can go to WTO in dispute settlement, subsidies and countervailing measures, agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. This we have already discussed. Agreement on agriculture. So agreement on agriculture, मेरे ख्याल से आपके मॉड्यूल में नहीं दिया है, but still I'm sharing this. Agriculture on agreement as per WTO is has categorized in 3 categories. जैसे ट्रैफिक लाइट्स होती है उसी तरह से इसको 3 कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड कर दिया, ग्रीन, ऑरेंज एंड रेड, green, yellow, and red. Green, yellow, and red, they have divided in this. So if a country goes for green box में कौन सी सब्सिडीज आती हैं, तो सबसे एग्रीकल्चर में जो आप सब्सिडीज देती है गवर्नमेंट, उसको 3 कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड कर दिया है, ग्रीन बॉक्स, blue box and amber box. Blue box and amber box. Okay, amber is matlab orange kind of a thing. Okay, so green comprises of what? Subsidies which are not or least market distorting, जिससे कि market पे कोई impact नहीं पड़ेगा. Those subsidies. Which are these subsidies? These subsidies are income support subsidies. So farmers are not getting enough income, so you give them income. You help them generate income through skilling them. उनको skill train कीजिए. You give them support in terms of technology. Okay, so safety net programs. You give them crop insurance. Okay, you give them payments under environmental programs. So if you want to go for organic farming, हम आपको organic seeds देंगे. We'll give you this kind of. So agriculture research. If you go for innovating, you go for some new way of growing crop and other things, we'll support you. So research and development subsidies, safety net programs, income support payments, skill programs, training programs. Okay, so this all comes. इसमें अगर आप subsidies देते हैं, so that is green box, which is acceptable as per WTO laws. So very smartly, US and others, where they are giving subsidies, they are giving here only. So US has exploited this opportunity by decoupling subsidies. So they are giving subsidies for outputs and financing research and development. They are giving subsidies for agriculture. They are giving subsidies in agriculture, but कहाँ दे रहे हैं? वो R&D भी दे रहे हैं, research and development. And they are in good books. कि हाँ, US is good because they are not offering subsidies. But India is in bad books. Why? Because we do not go for subsidies for research and development, for income. Then अब हम शुरू किया हमने, gradually we have started this. But otherwise हम subsidies कहाँ देते थे? We used to give for product. You grow wheat, we'll give you subsidy. You grow onion, we'll give you subsidy. So this is how we were doing. So what farmers were doing? They used to produce only one crop, and this used to result in bumper crop. अब आप एक चीज में सब्सिडी देंगे तो सारे फार्मर्स वही प्रोड्यूस करेंगे. ऑल ऑफ देम स्टार्टेड प्रोड्यूसिंग दैट. देयर वाज अ बम्पर क्रॉप जिसकी वजह से प्राइस क्रैश हो गई, फार्मर्स पे लॉस हो गया. दैट फार्मर्स लॉस वाज टेकन बाय गवर्नमेंट, सो गवर्नमेंट हैड टू बेयर दैट कॉस्ट. व्हाई? बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट ने उसमें बोल दिया कि हम आपको एमएसपी देंगे. So this is the drawback. So India is losing because of this. Okay. So what is blue box? Blue box is in this subsidies you offer, which covers payment on acreage. लैंड आपके पास कितना है, मार्जिनल फार्मर हो आप, कितना एकड़ ऑफ लैंड है आपके पास, आपका प्रोडक्शन कितना हो रहा है. इफ यू गेट लेस प्रोडक्शन, वी टेक केयर. आपके पास लाइव स्टॉक कितना है, हाउ मेनी बफेलोज यू हैव, हाउ मेनी काउज यू हैव, हाउ सस्टेनेबल यू आर. सो ये इसमें अगर आप सब्सिडीज दे रहे हैं, दैट इज इन ब्लू बॉक्स. ओके, तो इसमें टारगेट price fixed कर दिया with respect to the market price. What is the market price with respect to that? You fix the target price. And then you go for giving subsidies acceptable. Blue box is also acceptable. But amber box, that is orange box, these are distortions in subsidies which need to be curbed. Curbed means isko khatam karna hai. Why? Because they contain a category of domestic support that is scheduled for reduction based on formula called aggregate measures. Here, what are you doing? You are offering MSP. You are giving subsidies on fertilizers. You are reducing the price of your good, and you are restricting foreign players to go for exporting to your country. This is bad. And that was the Doha round dispute about developing countries. They said कि हमको यहाँ subsidy दे रहा है. But we saw that 2015 law says that the agreement says that we have to ban this. We have to stop this. And that is why developed countries and developing countries keep on fighting. And they do not come to one conclusion. And this is what is the biggest problem for WTO now. Okay. So there are pre-shipment agreements also. So pre-shipment agreements are, it itself means before the good gets exporter country के लिए applicable होता है ये. The country which is exporting has to ensure, and importer country can give guidelines to exporter country before the goods get shipped. उसके पहले ये norms होने चाहिए. Sometimes country want to go for non-tariff barrier. So the best way is that pre-shipment में आप इतने strict norms लगा दो कि वो country आपके country में goods export ही ना कर पाए. So that is how. So pre-shipment, like sometimes countries goes for importing country, goes for such stringent norms for pre-shipment, exports becomes almost difficult. In that case, they can report it to the WTO. So this is about a pre-shipment agreement. So guidelines उसमें और दो countries में आप differentiate कर रहे हो. So please do remember, for all agreements, two basic principles are most favored nation and national treatment. अगर जो आप एक country को offer कर रहे हो WTO member की, same you have to offer to the other country, most favored nation, and national treatment is if one country is coming to your country for any good or service exporting, then in that case the norm should be same. What norms you are laying down for your home country. जो norms आप अपने home player के लिए कर रहे हैं, वही norms आपको दूसरे प्लेयर के लिए भी, एक्सपोर्टर्स के लिए भी करने पड़ेंगे या इंपोर्टर्स के लिए भी करने पड़ेंगे. ओके. Then rule of origin. Rule of origin says that from which country the product has been originated. So somebody was talking about Pakistan. Pakistan से अगर origin हुआ, तो India can say कि we want to impose higher taxes. So obviously जो good पाकिस्तान से आया उसके ऊपर आपने higher rule of origin लगा दिया because वो उस कंट्री का ओरिजिन है और ऑब्वियसली आपकी कंट्री में वो एक्सपेंसिव हो जाएगा बिकॉज रूल ऑफ ओरिजिन के बेसिस पे. बट नाउ टुडे व्हाट्स हैपनिंग, रॉ मटेरियल कहीं और होता है, प्रोसेसिंग कहीं और होता है, फाइनल गुड कहीं और बनता है. सो इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू गो फॉर रूल ऑफ ओरिजिन एंड दैट इज व्हाई दिस इज अ चैलेंज फॉर WTO कि इसको कैसे सॉर्ट आउट करें इफ कंट्रीज कम विद अ डिस्प्यूट दैट this rule of origin has not been followed by the other countries. So these are the challenges WTO is also facing because of globalization. अब आप Apple iPhone देखिए, you make basic somewhere else, final कहीं और बनता है. Reebok का shoes है, उसका base कहीं और बनता है, final shoes कहीं और बनता है. Your PC, your laptop, your so many other things. So it is all getting assembled today. So it's very difficult to find out कि इसका origin क्या है and to document it. So that creates a problem today in the market, okay? Then trade policy review mechanism. What is trade policy review mechanism? Trade policy review mechanism is that what kind of trade policy norms you have. So disclosure norms and disciplines and other norms which you practice and you follow it. So that is about trade policy review mechanism norms. This is sometimes called as Plurilateral trade agreements. Plurilateral trade agreements are basically agreements जो WTO के basic norms थे over and above which have been redefined over the period of time because trade has become more complex, no? So these plurilateral trade norms are the norms which some countries are not ready to accept. उसकी वजह से बहुत problem हो जाता है because then when they had entered into agreement, These were not there. But now WTO had to go for proposing it because the market has changed. And these countries did not want to opt for it. So ये trade policy review mechanism के norms में complication है, which is becoming difficult for WTO to execute it. Okay. The two basic things are which are included in this is one is fair trade in civil aircraft. So this was introduced. This was the name of the agreement. Marrakesh Agreement was the name of the agreement which was introduced, which was part of this. So there were different agreements. जैसे उलगरे राउंड एग्रीमेंट था, दोहा राउंड एग्रीमेंट, वैसे ये मार्केश एग्रीमेंट था जिसमें कि ये ले डाउन किया था इन्होंने नाम. ओके, सो एग्रीमेंट ऑन civil aircraft. So civil aircraft norms is about engines hai, components hai. Your norms should be same. Flight simulators hai, parts hai, components hai, should be same. Okay, so that's about fair trade and civil. Any country you take it, the norm should be same. So whether it is about government financial support also and civil aircraft sector also. So anything related to in civil aircraft sectors, they have signed this agreement on Jan 1980, 1st of Jan, with 33 signatories. And this is related to all eliminating import duties on all aircrafts, including other than military aircrafts, because military aircrafts is something else, okay? So military aircrafts is something else. Doha round, abhi share karenge Bhumika, just give me 2 minutes. We are running short of time. So government procurement. See, आधी चीजें government procure करती है international market से. So this also talks about government procurement. Government procurement basically कि government कैसे manipulate कर सकता है goods का buy depending on how much it wants to buy and how it manipulates. So you see that government buys large amount of services, telecom services, for road services, airport services, power stations. Okay, so there is a huge political procurement system. Procurement system, government gives guidelines, lay down the norms. 33 signatories means 33 countries ने इसको sign किया था. 33 members ने इसको sign किया था, signatories. So here, what are we talking about? So aircrafts में we have shared. Aircrafts, military aircrafts में relaxation दिया है. उसी तरह से यहाँ पर telecom, when government decides about कि हमको ये चीजें international market से buy करनी है. So for government procurement, for telecom, जैसे 5G है आपका, for roads है, highways है, flyovers है, airports हैं. So government decides about that what is our procurement policy. If you are going to avail these services from any country, what are the basic norms we have to ensure? So we have to have a checklist, and that checklist should be transparent in nature. Okay, so they have to practice transparency and integrity. What you see today, you should adhere to it. Just a Vodafone case में हुआ. जब वो enter किए something else, then later on they were booked in transfer pricing. So they had to fight the case. So the norms should be very clear and well defined and should be transparent in nature to lead to benefits for the people and to the country, and should be fair in nature. So basically this for government procurement. When the government goes for procurement, they should lay down their norms very clearly. Okay. $33 signatories. Krishna, 33 signatories. Okay, so what are the two components on this government procurement? Government procurement has two components. So general rules and regulations and schedule of each participant and entities, procurement list of goods and services, construction services. So this comes under the agreement. If they exceed the threshold level indicated in the schedule, then they can approach to WTO. Okay, so this is how. So this takes care about fair and non-discriminatory conditions of international competition and procurement policies of the government. The government should be should lay down norms very clearly in black and white, and it should be uniform for all the players irrespective of each one. बुक में 32 आप इसको 33 करो बिकॉज ये एज पर WTO है. ओके, मेक इट 33. Krishna, make it 33. So Doha round is the latest. So Bhumika was asking about Doha round. So Doha round was of trade negotiation is a major landmark. Reason being, it is about dispute in WTO membership countries, between WTO membership countries, because Doha round was about major reforms of international trading system through introduction of lower trade barriers and revised trade rules. In this, they have covered 20 areas of trade. Black and white Mohit means कि आप ट्रांसपेरेंट हो, जो आप बोल रहे हो वो कर रहे हो. ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट एक फ्रेज है which is about कि आप ट्रांसपेरेंसी है सिस्टम में. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप अपनी वेबसाइट पे कुछ और बोल रहे हो, आपके डॉक्यूमेंट्स कुछ और बोल रहे हैं. जब आपने अग्रीमेंट किया तब आप कुछ और बोल रहे हो, और जब कंपनी आ गई है, जब when they have started working in India, तब आप कुछ और बोल रहे हो. ओके, so Doha round, they had gone for taking measures for underdeveloped countries. Underdeveloped countries, इसमें negotiations were on agriculture. So underdeveloped countries and developing countries had negotiated for agriculture because यहाँ पे they lack ना, हम lack करते हैं कहाँ पे? Agriculture में. Services, other countries they lack in service. We are good in services, but many countries are lacking in services. जैसे आप देखिए घाना, Africa, they lack in this intellectual property. And so these are the three basic factors, three basic parameters जो दोहा ministerial declaration में raise किए गए by developing countries and which were addressed by during this WTO meeting, and they had introduced reforms in terms of keeping lower trade barriers and revise the trade rules covering 20 areas of trade. So 20 areas of trade में इन्होंने revised scale norms, and that is why this Doha round has become highly significant for developing countries. Because उनके benefit में ये था क्योंकि they kept on fighting for this. अभी भी बहुत issues हैं जिसके लिए we are still fighting. Developing countries are still fighting. Okay, so if you can see, we have set two things WTO के बारे में, एक most favored nation and national treatment. Exactly. वो तो रेफरेंस पॉइंट है दोहा में हुआ, बट सिग्निफिकेंस उसका इसलिए है बेटा क्योंकि वो डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट लैंडमार्क है. ओके, सो हाउ सेटलमेंट डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट इज डन. सो WTO का इज वेल स्ट्रक्चर्ड. आप देखिए इसमें नंबर ऑफ डेज आर डिफाइंड. 60 days में they go for consultation and mediation if there's any dispute between two countries or three countries for any of the agreements which we have shared. Then in that case it goes to consultation. They go for discussing it. Mediation होता है दोनों countries के साथ में या disputed countries के साथ में. Then they go for establishing a panel. आप IBC पढ़ते हैं ना, उसी तरह से ये structured है. So they go for 45 days panel set up and panelists are appointed. Then for 6 months they submit their final reports to the parties, those parties which are involved, and final panel report to WTO members. वो report WTO members के बाद 3 weeks में जाती है. 60 days में dispute settlement body adopts report. They report को adopt करते हैं and then they go for without appeal. 1 year में उसको without appeal. So हो सकता है कि report आ गई उसके बाद the country which is not happy may go for dispute. फिर से वो अपील फाइल करे, and if it goes for filing appeal, then 60 to 90 days, further 30 days, or 1 year, 3 months में वो settlement हो जाता है. This is how dispute settlement is done by WTO. So whichever agreements we have shared, these agreements are framework. The way countries are supposed to behave. अगर वो उससे deviate करती हैं तो वो dispute settlement में जाएगा, and the country which wants to go for dispute settlement will approach. Okay, so this is about 25 years of WTO I hope this you will understand that WTO का benefit क्या है, countries को over the period trade facilitate हुआ है, economic integration हुआ है, job increase हुआ है, tariffs have reduced, and it has helped countries to grow at a faster pace. Value chain has become important component. Merchandise trade increase हुआ है. Developing countries have benefited. Even developed countries have benefited. Okay, so but the problem today is I've already told you. Problem is today technology. Problem is today e-commerce. Problem today is the pace at which countries' boundaries are squeezing, and content and other challenges are becoming so important. Okay. So this is the final, which you can see here broadly. So this about the last thing which I wanted to share, because we have already exceeded the time. I hope you will see this, go through this and see this once. Krishna is Singh Nama. Where is it written, Nama? Some acronym they might have written for this. Just check Krishna in your module. Some acronym they have used Nama. ये कोई abbreviation किसी का नहीं है. They might use some abbreviation like this. Okay, so this is dispute settlement body, ministerial conference, general council, trade policy review policy. They take care together. They form the council for trade in goods. They settle disputes. They take care about trade-related intellectual property rights, TRIPS and TRIMS. Then they take care about services. Then Doha round, which spoke about trade negotiations between countries, which were related to market accessibilities, trade facilitation, and dispute settlement, agriculture, cotton, and trade and environment. So this is what is all about, okay? So thanks, and let's wind up for the day. Where is it, Nama? Krishna, where is it, Nama? You just refer it to last page of your module. This simple acronym. Okay, okay, thank you then. Take care. Bye.